All the platforms that you had to use to access this inventory and these capabilities was behind big spend minimums. The technology was unwieldy and kind of difficult to use, and then even harder to make it do what you wanted it to do. It required special traders, effectively quants, to make it do what you want it to do from a performance perspective. So about 10 years ago, Dan and I started tinkering, and we knew that there was an easier way. We knew that most marketers actually didn't understand ad tech, and we knew that they shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to have this advanced license in order to make your business grow. It should be as easy as Facebook, easy as Google. Put in an objective, allow the technology to do what it can.
So, hey, Mike, thanks for joining Couch Confidentials. You are my first venture into something outside of Martech, and I'm super excited. As we just discussed, I did showed my weak spot, and that AdTech. I am a complete novice when it comes to AdTech. I know the terms, programmatic, advertising, etc. But before we dive into all the fun stuff that you want to teach us about AdLib, about programmatic, about how AI is affecting your business, how are you putting it to use? Can you kind of tell my viewers and listeners who you are, what AdLib does, and where did you come from?
Sure. Matthew, thanks for having me on. I'm the founder, CEO of AdLib. We're a programmatic advertising platform, and I'll get into how we're different in several ways in just a minute. Background is Dan Bogert and I. Dan is my co-founder. He's our CTO. He's based out of London. We worked together for many years, actually going back to 2006.
Oh, wow.
We were early employees at MediaMath together. We joined there in 2010, which was one of the first enterprise DSPs. Dan was overseeing an engineering department there. I was overseeing a team that was customizing the platform. And we saw that there was this massive opportunity for marketers being untapped in terms of scale, measurable performance, addressability, channels that are just starting to come online that effectively were behind these incredibly high barriers to entry. All the platforms that you had to use to access this inventory and these capabilities was behind big spend minimums. The technology was unwieldy and kind of difficult to use, and then even harder to make it do what you wanted it to do. It required special traders, effectively quants, to make it do what you wanted to do from a performance perspective. So about 10 years ago, Dan and I started tinkering, and we knew that there was an easier way. We knew that most marketers actually didn't understand ad tech, and we knew that they shouldn't have to. You shouldn't have to have this advanced license in order to make your business grow. It should be as easy as Facebook, easy as Google. Put in an objective, allow the technology to do what it can.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And we started off somewhat naively about 10 years ago to tackle that problem. We've gone through several incarnations and iterations of the platform since then. But where we're at now is we offer an intelligent platform that allows marketers to scale profitably in programmatic advertising.
Yeah.
You don't have to sign up for this huge, risky contract, staff up to make it work with these specialized resources, and they could do that in-house. They could do that with full control and visibility into what's working and what's not, and making it as easy to access and making it as performant as channels that these marketers are used to, and making it less scary, making it less fragmented, not using all these acronyms and terms that, we use them in.
Yeah, that confused the hell out of me. Yeah.
Yeah. Confuse everybody. It's a lot of sausage making, and we're just talking about results. We're talking about outcomes.
Well,
and program.
It's so funny that you mentioned. Yeah, sorry to interrupt that, but it's so funny that you mentioned it because it's one of the biggest trends that I'm actually seeing in Martech at the moment. And I know I still sound like someone from QVC right now, but what I am seeing is that technology, look, I get the whole advancements in technology. It has become more complex. It has become more difficult. And in some cases, it feels like you need a PhD to be able to work with some of these platforms. And the trend that I'm seeing now is that companies are realizing a lot of this tech is working against them because of that complexity. But the question, and it's good to hear that you've seen that as well. But the biggest question I have, you came from an engineering background. You're working with the former CTO. Oh, sorry, your CTO is now in London. So you both have technical backgrounds. How did you do the research? How did you get the experience to understand what it was like for marketeers to actually work with these platforms, to understand what you needed to build?
So Dan, his background is mostly core engineering. He's a developer. I kind of straddle the sales and the engineering side, and
Yeah,
was a sales engineer earlier in my career, and then oversaw the team, the organization that was customizing the platform for the most sophisticated clients and users. So I was being called into sales conversations, client onboarding conversations,
yeah,
understanding at the bleeding edge what marketers were trying to do with the platform that it couldn't do out of the box, and whether that was some workflow constraint or some entirely new feature we were building at the edge. And we were able to move more nimbly because we built out a
yeah,
solutions engineering team that could move more quickly than the core product organization. And MediaMath was really set up to be an enterprise organization, and rightfully so, they moved at that speed. So we kind of saw, well, there's the rest of this market that would benefit from a more nimble product, something that's maybe kind of built more for the mid market, but also can be customized more rapidly.
yeah. Is that what your experience as a founder? You have your enterprise experience, like you said, and now as a founder, does it feel like there's like a weight lifted off your shoulder that you can be more flexible? Because I can fully imagine it, and I think that it's kind of a circle that keeps on, kind of this wheel that keeps on turning, where startups turn into scale ups, they ramp up all the way up to enterprise, and then they kind of stall in their flexibility and being able to serve the more niche markets within their client portfolios. And that's where you see these new pop-ups. Is that kind of where you feel that you are at right now?
Yes, and I heard about 80% of that through that Slack huddle alarm that was coming through. So I think I'm wired that way, like most entrepreneurs. Like I kind of always like knew that I would have my own thing. I kind of always felt most comfortable and most confident when I was in control and I was
Yeah.
able to control the destiny, and just had confidence in my abilities and in my gut. So, a
Yeah.
lot of that is played out in how we saw this opportunity, kind of like I said, like naively, like we knew we could do it better. It's like,
That's cocky, man.
yeah, well,
But yeah,
we
that's
were,
the entrepreneurship.
we were totally wrong. Like we were kind of right, but it was not, and we thought it was going to be easy. It was not easy. The building. Can you build a simple UI? Yes. Can you build a business around a simple UI? That's way fucking harder. Can you build a sustainable business around a simple UI, competing against, you know, the biggest companies, some of the biggest companies in the world, totally bootstrapped when
Yeah.
you've never done this before? Like that takes a certain amount of
Persistence.
naivety, persistence, and you have to be smaller. You can almost only do that if you're smaller and you don't have all the
But how
funding.
has
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I fully agree. But when you do get the funding, there are other expectations that you need to meet. And I think being bootstrapped, that gives you more flexibility in that. But I think, being the entrepreneur that you are, you're not doing this just because you think that it's a good idea. I think you're doing this because you see a certain requirement with customers. And with the customers that are working with you now, are you starting to see that experiences, or how should I say, their experiences reflected in the work that you've been doing, the goal that you had in mind to really shake up the industry a bit?
Yeah. We started off as kind of like the DSP for everyone, easy to access, easy to use. People that were turned away from the bigger DSPs, and we've started
Get
to
turned
work.
away?
Well, turned away because they couldn't reach the commercial commitments, or they just weren't the right fit.
Oh,
Rightfully
wow.
so. These companies have their ICPs and they have a model that makes their business work. But if
Yeah.
you want to get a direct license with some of the big DSPs, you have to typically sign up for an annual agreement. And with that,
Wow.
our spend commitment. So we started off with the longer tail and we're working our way now up market because we've been able to build faster, use that second mover advantage or that third mover advantage of
Yeah.
seeing what's worked, seeing what hasn't worked, and being a really small company that can quickly pivot and move into the newly created space based on
Yeah.
how marketers are thinking, how they're needing to do more with less. AI is now a thing. How do we embed that in our organization and in our client workflows from scratch? We don't have to rip apart what we've already done and kind of make it an add on. This is all core to our business and to our
Yeah.
product because we don't, it's all not fully baked yet.
No, no, indeed. And you did mention a few interesting topics there that I want to get into later, especially around AI. But I mean, let me give you like my perspective on DSP. So in my history, I did a lot of tag management work. So companies wanted to implement analytics or they wanted to implement advertising tags, pixels, whatever you want to call them these days, anything from Google Ads, Criteo, God, there's so many of them.
Yeah.
I can't recall them all. Meta. Well, anyway, all those tracking pixels. And at a certain point, I mean, if you go back, 10 years ago, it was kind of a Wild West scenario. You had tag management systems that were filled to the brim with these data collection. There was no ethics around it. There was no regulation around it. People were tracking everything. So what is your experience being right now? And with all these regulations coming into place, and it's a naive question from me, but I seriously don't know. But I do understand that from the Martech side, consent is a huge thing that we need to respect and implement. But from a DSP, how does it actually work when you look at consent and advertising networks? What do we do with the user data? Even though, to what point can we anonymize it and make sure that we don't get PII in there? What does that look? Is that something that still plays a big role within DSP?
Oh, absolutely. Look back at organizations I've worked at. Those groups, the legal groups, the compliance groups are huge. They're filled with really smart people who deeply understand the industry, are advocates for consumers,
Yeah.
consumer privacy. And of course, there are, like any industry, ways to make money that are going to entice people to do bad things. Generally,
Yeah, there are always bad actors somewhere.
there's always bad actors, but generally, there's been a ton of legal framework internationally as well as here in the States, and a lot of tailwinds from the consumer side, uh, making sure that those bad actors have less room to play.
No, definitely. I mean, it's I've always seen it as a benefit. I mean, it did complicate a lot of the work that I did. I remember when GDPR came into effect, we had to implement it for a corporate website, and it was like 2 or 3 days later, they said, "Hey, our advertising performance just dropped.
Yeah.
We need to revert that because we're not getting the insights from the ads." And I noticed that it was really a cultural change we needed to make within the organization where respecting user privacies, respecting the consent banner. It wasn't taken as seriously now, but day to day, and I think even in the US, I've seen articles about specialized law firms kind of acting like pirates on the at the coming around the Cape, looking for corporate websites, company website, commercial retailers, whatever, that do not adhere to regional or national laws, just to be able to take them to court. It's a huge change from 10 years ago, but just that makes a nice segue. Talk about change. AI for the last couple of years has also been doing that. And I'm curious to hear from you. What's your experience with AI in AdTech? As I know in Martech, it feels like every vendor has taped on the AI to their product list right now.
Yeah.
In some cases, it's turning out to be a really valuable add-on to their feature set. But there are also a lot of cases where I'm like, what are you trying to do? Just be able to be, score higher in your SEO ranking because you have the word AI in there. It's not always as thought out as I would expect it to be. How is
Yeah.
that? With AdLib, have you considered AI? I think you have, looking at the website and the products that you offer. But what has been the experience around that so far for you in terms of some of the stories I've been hearing about, hallucinations, who guards the guardians? I mean, putting in guardrails, et cetera. So I'm
Yeah.
really curious to hear how you guys put that to work. Sorry, that's a long question, but I think we get the essence.
I get it. I'm just going to parse it through ChatGPT to distill it down for me so I can answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely.
It's
That's ironic, but yeah, let's
no,
take it.
it was a little bit of comedic interjection there, but like to say I've been using it, we've been using it everywhere. Like it's pervasive throughout our organization in just our day to day and the mundane. And as I alluded to earlier, we're so excited because we are still in such early days as far as our product and scaling that this is not going to, we don't treat it as an add-on. It's core to everything that we're doing. So we're not making
All
like
right.
big splashes around like here's something that we did and trying to make a PR push. We're really embracing it and using it a little bit behind the scenes just to make our product better, make
Yeah.
client results better, make our day to day easier. And that all results in better outcomes and better results for clients. Are there some chat based interfaces that we're working on and some prompts and some stuff that we'll do to generate creative based on AI? Yes. But really, we've been using it more as a co pilot right now than as this thing to just let it take control of all your problems. It's not
All right.
mature
So
enough.
you're really using it on the generative side for now, not really trying to help you optimize the campaigns any further, so to say. Not yet.
Surfacing it. So like there's a human that closes that loop and approves the closure of that loop, if you will.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I'm all for that.
we are ingesting reporting. We are looking at attribution methodologies from third party vendors, pushing that into various LLMs and allowing that, to inform potential updates, having a team look at that, getting insights, having deeper, broader insights more instantly, and
Yeah.
then letting a human determine which of those actually make sense, which of those are relevant to the client, which of those do we have the opportunity to test now, and then refining that model over time and having more autonomy is where we will go with it. But right now, it's just data scientist on hand, basically for free. That's always on, that never gets tired, that never has a coffee break. And you could just tell it to redo itself like 10 times and it won't get annoyed at you and want to leave its job. That is just the biggest game changer in the world. All the way through to like giving that to the client next, right? And surfacing suggestions to the client in a feed to allow them to be more intelligent and be more self-sufficient. Hey, here are some tests that our system identified as likely have a high likelihood to drive incrementality.
Mm-hmm.
You want to deploy this test? Cool. Like here are some thresholds to consider. How do you feel about this, this, and this? Okay, cool. Ready to deploy? Ready to deploy. And then next day, hey, Mike, ran your test. Here's some of the results. Do you want to change? Like that is so powerful that we're going to see 10x outcomes within the next 12 to 18 months when it's done right.
And that's still the situation where you're keeping the human in the loop, of course, where your platform will actually mull over the data and say, hey, this is where I see an opportunity. Do you want to take it? Yes or no? And then follow up on that. Is
Yeah.
that kind of the request you're seeing from your customers? I mean, one of the things that really surprised me around about AI is the huge, or not the huge, I mean, well, yeah, huge, but the how quickly people have gone to grips with it, how quickly they've kids on ChatGPT. Heck, even my mother, who's 80 plus, she's on ChatGPT. The adoption rate's insane. And so I can only imagine that, your customers are saying, hey, what can we do with AI? Is this something that you guys collaborate on with your customers, or
Definitely.
to at least extract ideas from?
Definitely, right. So you have the agency clients who are very collaborative and are doing a lot of hard work, hard analysis manually. And to be
Yeah,
able to have more better tools to drive better results for their clients and to allow them to take on more work and not have to scale resources linearly is where they're asking us, to develop. It makes a ton of sense, right? Because you're always going to
yeah,
need an intermediary or a group that is specializing in the marketing and the funnel and looking at data and taking things over. You have brands who, they care slightly less about the sausage making and they just want results. I think we're very far away from that just being totally AI driven, just entering in a CPA and really behind the scenes having enough trust in the platforms to do what to do everything. You saw kind of the
yeah.
revolt against PMAX and the current revolt against
Well,
PMAX.
I haven't seen it. I mean, like I said, I'm a bit of a
Oh
newbie.
yeah.
But what was the
Okay.
revolt against PMAX then in that case?
So
I understand that it was Google's solution to automatically optimize campaigns based on IA or IA. What is this coming from?
yeah, that's the
AI,
information.
AI, with AI driving your campaigns. I guess that's what it came down.
Yeah, you're talking about advertising budgets that are tens, hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars for some of these larger organizations. And the risk associated with advertising in unsafe environments for that brand, those companies will always require control and verification. And some of that gets taken away when you just have bots doing it and you say, just trust PMAX or just
Yeah.
trust this platform, just trust this platform. And there's a degree of I think most advertisers and most brands should be caring about this. There's certain advertisers who just won't place spend through a platform where they don't have that level of control and they can't look at data, make decisions on their own around what they view as worthy of being associated with their brand, even if it's driving results.
Could
There's
partially be still the immaturity of the technology behind it, because I feel that where we've come from, we're making huge steps in actually realizing technology like PMAX. But like you said, yeah, as a larger company, you want more control. Would it be a matter of improving the results before enterprise-sized companies or companies with huge budgets, agencies, actually say, hey, all right, now's the time to go down that PMAX road?
I mean, maybe some of these companies are large public organizations and compliance, and there's just no way around it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, good points. Yeah.
You're talking about
You're talking about auditability.
audit, exactly
Yeah.
auditability, and there's really no choice. And then you have right like AI is also being used by the bad actors to just generate a proliferation of content and supply that is like bad AI versus good AI. It's like
Yeah.
at one point maybe there's trust, but there's always going to need to manually scrutinize.
Yeah.
And I'm saying this in 2025. In 20 years from now, maybe someone will look back at this and the technology will be so advanced, or in 10 years from now, I don't know how long.
Yeah.
I'll
Oh,
probably look back at it and say, hey, how crazy it is to have thought that humans could do this job better than robots.
yeah. I think, yeah, well, 20 years time is probably like, hey, here's $10,000. This is the results that I'm expecting.
Yeah.
Make it happen. And it's funny because in Martech, the world's a little bit, there are a few cases now where they are actually allowing AI within some confounds of a framework to actually take control
Hmm.
of certain campaigns. But since that is all first party data, it's a lot easier to steer. There's a lot more historic data to work with. And I think the most important, one of the more crucial features that they've implemented, there's this one company, High Touch, they're putting in these guardrails because they're saying, hey, it's, everything's great, but you need to adhere to our guidelines, that our expectations of what you can and cannot do. It's no, it's definitely interesting times, and I can see that the challenge is a little bit bigger for DSPs. And that kind of brings me to another topic. I mean, data quality is I feel like everyone's talking about it now with Martech, and with all respect for it, because it's, I mean, like you said, it's 2025 and we're still talking about data quality. You think we would have learned by now how to properly track behavior in a digital manner, but we're still lacking behind. And especially in combination with AI, that makes it really harder. What are your challenges that you're facing right now with, I don't know, iOS 26 coming out? They're going to be removing all tracking capabilities, I think, for most of the apps, or at least maybe just, the built-in apps like Safari. You won't be able to track them. What kind of impact are all these device regulations and going to, or ITP, I believe it's called, on your business? Is that something that you try to stay ahead of, or?
Definitely. Listen, and measuring the results of marketing has been around for longer than programmatic advertising.
Even before
And
computers, I've heard.
yeah, exactly. And there's been a bit of a renaissance and a rebirth in how marketers are thinking about measurement, and we view it as a huge opportunity. I think a lot of people got lazy. Not There's could have been a tendency to get lazy. With
Yeah.
last click attribution, and a lot of spend being wasted just by platforms that opaquely drive results. And what is their attribution methodology, and how like marketers are more sophisticated now. They've got more sophisticated tools that allow them to understand true incrementality, allow them to quickly deploy media mix modeling tests, test dark market and light market, test dark markets and light markets, and turn off advertising in certain regions that have a specific baseline, keep them going in a similar region that has a similar baseline, and see what's working. Right? There's ways to quantify those results. There's ways to understand which channels, which media, which creative are driving those results that are not depending on a technology that was kind of retrofitted for this purpose. Right? Like the origin of the cookie was not to measure advertising results. It was a way to keep data in a browser so that the information could be more readily retrievable for various purposes, and it got
Yeah.
used for this one specific purpose. But now that's all being reimagined, and it's being rebuilt, and with technology that's more compatible with the way marketers are thinking about it today, more compatible with consumers and what they care about. Exciting to be in this space that's really not dependent on gaming, the system, and some of the older ways of just, winning that game versus a true business that's adding value.
Yeah. And when you talk about, leveraging these new methods, from a marketing perspective, do you? And again, this might be a naive question, but we do talk a lot about data clean rooms, the technology where we anonymize the kind of the customer data that we have in a data warehouse, for instance, and see if we can find a match on a retail network or maybe on a DSP. Have you ever thought about what the potential power could be by kind of integrating AdTech with Martech? I know there have been a few discussions floating around saying that AdTech and Martech are slowly kind of headed towards a convergence. But I think that would mean that we would need to make a tool like AdLib accessible from within a marketing automation platform that heavily relies on first-party data. Do you see anything like that potentially happening in the future?
Absolutely. Yeah. You've already seen some aspects of marketing and our tech capabilities coming into DSPs, and some buying capabilities going into planning and forecasting tools. You're dealing with very different companies, very different technologies. Some technologies that are potentially still built on mainframe, on-prem servers. A lot of it's moved to the cloud now, and you've got very different organizations within the clients that are still pretty siloed.
Yeah.
So it's moving maybe at the pace of the demand.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
is how I would think about it. There will be a convergence point at some point in the future, and maybe that'll be accelerated, by some of the things
Yeah.
that are happening now with AI, just making it easier to integrate, to build, and to connect disparate systems.
Yeah. No, I sometimes see the cases where ad tech does come into play on CDPs, and I still see that it's difficult. You still kind of need this middleman to set up programmatic advertising directly based on data in a customer data platform.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I'm curious to see that maybe like in a few years time. I like the point that you made that it is a question of demand. I mean, let's be honest, you're not going to build something if there's no demand for it. So as the marketers mature, which we've also been seeing, I mean, we're looking at like into a second or third generation of digital marketers right now in the workforce. And as their skills increase, their creativity is hopefully also going to increase to the point where they say, we have this huge customer database with identity graphing in there that includes various device IDs, behavior. Can't we set up certain segments that we can then sync with a tool like AdLib? What do you see in practice right now when companies do want to take that approach? Is it still kind of shooting fish in a barrel, or are company? Yeah, sorry for the simplistic view there, maybe, but what is it like? Again, and this is just my lack of experience working in ad tech, to build out segments within a DSP. And like you already mentioned, if something's working in one region, it might work in another. You're starting to look for lookalikes and mimic your campaign strategy to try and get the same effects from that. What does that really look like in ad
Yeah.
tech when you want to build out these segments of users and then match them to a goal?
So you have your first party data, which is going to comprise of information held in a CRM that can be onboarded
Okay.
anonymously and used to target a user based on some information that's held in that CRM about them, whether that be lifetime value, lapsed customer,
Yeah, yeah, all the
bounce lapse,
historic data.
all that stuff. Yeah, and then
When you say anonymous, sorry to interrupt, is that like hashing personal data like emails or phone numbers to be able to find a match on an ad network? Okay.
exactly, and that's getting distributed to your targeting to your buying platform, and you can target those, literal target those audiences, suppress audiences, etc. You can also bring on board website visitors and app users by putting code on those pages and having those signals fed in. There's a
Yeah.
whole world marketplace within these platforms, third party data providers. These are some of the largest Martech companies. These are some of the largest payment processors globally that have their own taxonomies of audience segments that is, a user can go in and break out looking at sociographic signals, demographic signals, past purchase behaviors. It's a lot. There's millions of segments, and it's a lot to go through. So to the end user, that's can be incredibly overwhelming. Sometimes they know that they should like it's just within the agency they always use this one because that's the gold standard. Sometimes they've got to go hunting and pecking because this specific audience is really only available by a one provider globally. And some providers are
Yeah.
local to Latin America. Some providers are local to Europe and are specialized in compliance and collection. Have better footprints, have better relationships in those regions to source and secure the data.
And is that where your platform kind of plugs into then?
Yes.
And is those various platforms? Because I read when I was reading up around AdLib, that is kind of the platform that you offer. Instead of dealing one with various retail networks or advertising networks, it can go through AdLib, and I think that's alleviating some of the frustrations you were talking about previously with your with the media math. Well, not necessarily media math, but the enterprise world that you were
Yeah.
working in at the time.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It was historically marketers had options of there's some very large DSPs. Some of the inventory is exclusive. Some of the data targeting and the data is exclusive, and it's all fragmented and walled off, and I can't access all of it. And if I did access all of it, you know, it's an operations nightmare, and it's difficult to track and reconcile. So AdLib is that single kind of unified system that eliminates the fragmentation and
Yeah.
is ingesting all the audiences from all the different data providers across all the different DSPs, so that as a user, I don't have to log in and search across 10 different platforms, or maybe I'm using 3 because I only have 3 licenses for 3. Now I could search around 20 across 20, all from this single unified experience.
Yeah.
And that creates more opportunity for these mid-sized agencies who historically may not have had access to a certain audience, or may not have access to a
Yeah.
certain media type because their platform didn't have it.
That's amazing, though. You think that problem would have been solved years ago if you have such a fragmented market, a segment of audience providers. Wow, that's well, at least it's safe to say I learned something today, that ad tech can still be, as much as sometimes we sit and talk about being at that edge of the technology, that a lot of companies are still 10 steps behind, trying to keep up, trying to educate themselves, and trying to get the most bang for their buck. So it's interesting to hear what you're building around that, Mike. And I want to thank you for your time today. And again, sorry for not being the ad tech or the ad tech specialist, but it's really interesting to hear how that convergence might happen. I hope it does happen, because I think, to kind of come back to what we said in the beginning, that you, based on your experience as well, and what I'm seeing, is that a lot of this technology is so difficult to work with. And your goal, what I understand with AdLib, and by connecting all these different networks to your solution, is to make a lot of people's lives easier in actually setting out these campaigns, which I hope maybe we'll speak together again in a few years' time, and that it will have evolved into the dream that you have right now. And by your sound and dedication and knowledge that you have, I think that's definitely going to work.
Matthew, thank you for having me on and for giving me the forum to share what we're working on here at AdLib. And looking forward to
Absolutely.
connecting with you just down the road and seeing how far we've all come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you're the first tangent I'm taking out of Martech. So maybe you've inspired me to look in a few more other directions and learn a little bit more about the whole ecosystem we're living in today.
Keep it up, man.
I'll see you around.
Keep doing what you're doing. Thank you. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye.
Bye.